I wake up to the same sound I wake up to every morning now. The low hum from the inverter wall, and the soft relay click that tells me the battery bank has shifted loads for the day cycle. I roll out of the bunk before the alarm chirps, pull on my thermal shirt, and head straight for the monitor wall without turning on the overhead lights. I never start with the room. I start with outside. That is the rule. Street cam first, front curb empty. The old delivery van is still up on one flat tire with the side door half open. Alley cam next, clear at the fence line. Roof cam at the Hartwell place, south side panel row, light frost on the lower edges. Drainage ditch cam, 2 downed infected under the broken concrete lip, no motion. Church lot cam, 1 slow mover near the signpost, circling the same patch of cracked asphalt. I move through all 12 outside feeds, then the workshop camera, then the ladder shaft, then the crawl exit tunnel, then the intake screen over the rear vent baffle. I check them in the same order every day. If I change the order, I miss things. That's not theory. I learned that the hard way a long time ago. Anything moving? Susan asks from the galley while she lights the little propane ring. Her voice is rough from sleep and dry air. She doesn't look up yet. She's pouring coffee through the mesh filter we've cleaned so many times the handle has gone smooth from my thumb and hers. Holly is still in her bunk room, not asleep, just pretending she's not listening. I know the difference. I keep my eyes on the screen wall and answer in the same clipped way I always do when I'm counting feeds. Church lot, 1 by the sign. Ditch has 2 old ones down. West branch camera has static. Output's low on the south run. Susan sets my mug beside my hand and leans over the charge screen. That panel line dropped hard yesterday too. She taps the graph with 1 finger. I know. She glances at me. You going up? After I check water and air, she lets out a quiet breath and shakes her head once. Not arguing, not pleased, just marking the day for what it is. Above us, somewhere in the ceiling pipes, a little bubble of air knocks through the grey water return line. Everything in this place has a sound, and if you live down here long enough, you learn what every sound means. Holly comes out with her blanket wrapped around her shoulders and stops by the screens in bare feet. Her hair is tied up crooked from sleep. She squints at the static box on the far right monitor. West branch again? Looks that way. Maybe snow on the lens. Maybe line loss. Maybe the controller on the porch roof finally gave up. Maybe, I say, and I move to the utility panel. 48-volt stack is lower than I want, but not low enough to force the generator. Intake fans are pulling clean. Carbon dioxide stays inside range. Water tank is just under half, right where it should be after laundry yesterday, and 2 wash cycles. Sump is dry. Pantry humidity is good. Freezer holds. One of the air scrubber pre-filters is picking up dust faster than it should, and the equalizer on bank 3 is running warmer than the other 2. Nothing here is ever one problem. Every morning there's a list, and the list grows if I don't move fast. Holly stares at the battery display, and then looks at me with that face she used to make when she wanted to argue, and now mostly uses when she wants to admit I was right without saying it straight. Susan says it for her. If this was 3 years ago, I'd still be telling you that you spent half our life savings on a hole in the ground and a pile of batteries. She sets a bowl of oats on the table. I know. I said it plenty. You did. I was wrong. She says it plain. No smile, no drama. Just the sentence. Holly looks at the floor for a second, then at the monitor wall. I was worse, she says. I called it the world's dumbest basement. You did that too. She gives 1 short laugh through her nose. I also said if the end of the world came, I'd rather take my chances upstairs than sit underground with storage buckets and wiring diagrams. Susan snorts at that and slides another bowl onto the table. You used a few stronger words. Holly pulls out the chair and sits. Yeah, I did. I sit with them, but I keep the side screen on while I eat. That's how breakfast goes here. Spoons, coffee, charts, camera feeds. Family time with a voltage graph. Susan folds her hands around her mug and looks right at me while I'm chewing. Tell her again why you started this. Not the short version. She needs the whole thing. Holly groans. I know why he started. You know the angry version, Susan says. You know the one from when I was mad, and you were mad, and he was already digging holes in the yard and bringing home concrete forms. She points at me with the spoon. Tell it while you eat. I wipe my mouth with the back of my hand and look at the West Branch static for a second before I answer. It starts with that ice storm when the substation went down. We were out for 5 days. Grocery shelves were empty by the second morning. Gas stations shut down by noon. People got mean by dark. I spent the whole week patching backup lines for 3 businesses that had cash and connections while the neighborhood sat cold. After that came the summer blackout. Then the warehouse riots downtown after that dock strike. Then the virus scare. Then the freight shortage. Then another storm. Every time something broke, all the normal people on television said it was temporary, under control, no cause for panic. Every time the stores emptied first, then tempers did. Holly drops her spoon into the bowl and leans on her elbows. That's why you bought canned food and tools. That part I get. No, I say. That's why I stopped trusting the surface. The bunker came after I crawled into a hospital basement during the tornado siren, with 40 strangers who all thought the power would be back in an hour. It wasn't. We sat on a concrete floor in the dark while people argued over phone chargers and water bottles. I watched a maintenance man keep that place alive with one flashlight, a ring of keys, and a checklist taped inside a cabinet door. He knew which breaker to cut, which pump to restart, which fan would seize if he ran it too hard. He kept 2 floors of frightened people from choking on bad air and flooding. I got home after that and I started drawing. Not bunker drawings at first. System drawings. Water, air, power, access, quiet, redundancy. Then the drawings kept growing until I had a storm shelter that turned into this. Susan nods along while I talk, not because she hasn't heard it, but because she lived every part of it and wants Holly to hear it without the old resentment packed on top. Tell her about the permits, she says. That's my favorite part now. Holly rolls her eyes. Oh no, the permit speech. I point the spoon at the ceiling. Legal storm shelter permit under the workshop. That was phase 1. Concrete pour, reinforced walls, drainage, basic ladder access. Nothing strange. People in this state put shelters in all the time. Phase 2 was the workshop foundation repair and utility trench. That gave me room for cable runs and water storage. Phase 3 was a new battery backup system for my contracting business, on paper. The solar came in as salvage from 3 job sites where the owners wanted newer panels, and I bought the old ones cheap. The air handling units came out of a medical office remodel. The steel doors came from a closed records facility. I didn't build this in 1 month. I built it in pieces over 7 years, 1 truckload at a time, every piece with a story I could say out loud if a neighbor asked. Holly picks up her spoon again and stirs her oats without eating. I remember the fights. Susan laughs once, tired and dry. No, you remember hearing the fights through your headphones. I remember the bills. I look at Susan. You had reason. She points at the pantry shelves and then the ceiling above us. I had reason before. I've got evidence now. Holly reaches for the side logbook and flips to yesterday's page. She runs her finger over the supply columns, then over the battery notes, then the camera list. When I said you wasted money, I thought you were building some weird hobby bunker you'd be proud of, and nobody would need. She looks up at me. I said you were trying to buy control. I was trying to buy options, I say. Control is fake. You can't control the surface. You can buy time. You can buy water capacity. You can buy spare filters. You can buy the chance to say no when the outside wants something from you. That's what this place is. She nods slowly, and that's enough. I don't need more than that. I finish breakfast, rinse my bowl, and move straight into the day. The West Branch line is not going to fix itself while we sit around talking about how smart or dumb I used to look. I open the maintenance drawer and lay the gear out on the table. Side cutters, crimp tool, spare charge fuse, 2 weather boots for the cable junctions, cleaning brush for the panel face, new lens cloth for the west porch camera, compact meter, tape, but only for wrap protection after a clean connection, never for a real repair. Susan watches me check each piece. You taking the long route or the fence route? Long route. If the west branch is dirty at the Coleman porch, I can get there through the Avery garage and keep off the open lane. Holly stands and starts pulling up the route map on the board without being asked. I'll tag the blind spots. You'll monitor comms, no chatter, 1 click stop, 2 hold, 3 return. I know. Say it anyway. She sighs, then repeats the code back to me while I pull on my outer clothes. She does that less out of obedience now and more out of discipline. It took time to get there. Susan meets me at the decon vestibule with the wash tub already set and the rack clear for the return. She checks my gloves before I even put them on. She always does. Outer shell on the left palm is thinning. I'll switch them when I get back. You'll switch them now. She reaches behind her and hands me the better pair. There's no point arguing with her on something like that. She's saved me from sloppy habits enough times that I stop pretending I know better when I'm in a hurry. I trade the gloves, zip my jacket, sling the little pack over one shoulder, and pull the carbine under the cloth sleeve so it doesn't print clean if somebody catches a glimpse from a distance. We use firearms when we have no cleaner option. Noise draws the infected, and the infected draw roaming people, and roaming people draw more trouble than the infected half the time. Susan touches my arm before I climb the ladder. Check the west line. Check the porch panel. Don't go looking for extras. I know. Come back with what you can carry, not what you wish you could salvage. I know. Holly leans in from the main room and says, "Bring back 1 orange if you find a miracle." I look at her. "That's your shopping list?" I'm aiming high. The workshop hatch opens under the old rolling tool chest. I push the chest aside, lift the insulated lid, and listen before I climb. That part has never changed. I stop with my head below floor level and hold still until the air settles. No scrape of shoes on concrete. No faint bump against the side door. No breathy moan from the yard side. I come up slow, 1 rung at a time, and check under the benches, behind the stacked lumber, past the drill press, and toward the boarded window slits. Dust looks undisturbed. My boot prints from the last trip are faint under a new layer of fine grit. Good. I seal the hatch, slide the tool chest back over it, and stand still another few seconds. The workshop always feels odd after the bunker. The ceiling seems too high and the walls too thin, even though I built both and know exactly how thick they are. I move to the south slit, angle the board, and check the backyard. Fence line clear. Garden boxes untouched. Hedge still hides the rear opening. Light is better than yesterday. Cold, bright and flat. I slip out the side door and hug the workshop wall until I reach the hedge gap. Our yard looks dead from above and useless from the fence line. I made sure of that. Half the raised beds are collapsed. The old swing frame is down on one side, and the compost barrel has been cracked open and left tipped in a patch of weeds. Anyone looking over the fence sees one more abandoned yard that ran out of care a long time ago. What nobody sees from the outside is the clean route between the hedge roots, the concealed intake baffle under the broken planter, and the buried cable line that runs under the old stepping stones, out through the Keeler lot, and into the West Branch nodes. I cross into the Keeler yard first, then behind the detached garage. Then through a section of loose fence panel I can lift an inch and slide past without metal rubbing metal. The surface is never quiet. Wind moves loose siding. A chain knocks somewhere far off. One crow yells from a roof peak and then goes silent. I take my time and keep my feet off anything that rolls. The Avery garage is my first stop on the way to the Coleman porch. The West Branch runs through a fake junction box under the Avery eave, then jumps by buried line to the porch roof controller on the Coleman place. I stay low by the garage wall, pop the cover off the junction box, and check the feed. Voltage is there, but not clean. The line is carrying extra resistance. Not enough to kill the branch. Enough to dirty the camera signal. I trim a corroded lead, set a fresh connector, and close the box. That should help, but it won't clear the static unless the porch node itself is the real issue. I move across the narrow cut between the garage and the hedge and take one knee by the broken birdbath that marks the last blind angle before the Coleman yard. That's where I pause and scan. The old pharmacy lot at the corner comes into view through the branches. 2 men are in it. One has a yellow raincoat over a winter jacket. The other is carrying a crowbar and moving straight toward the loading door. Roamers. Not neighbors. Not organized. I can tell by the way they keep looking down instead of out. Organized groups check windows, corners, roof lines. Hungry men check handles and locks. I stay put and watch them for a full minute. A third person, a woman in a green coat, steps out from behind the pharmacy dumpster carrying a canvas sack. She points at the front street, says something I can't hear, then gestures hard at the man with the crowbar. He turns, gets sharp with her, then goes back to the loading door. She's the one doing the thinking. He's the one making noise. That kind of split gets people in trouble fast. I look past them to the far side of the lot. One infected stands near the newspaper rack, facing nothing, one arm hanging wrong. Another is down by the curb. No movement yet. If the man starts prying at metal, that lot is going to wake up. That's not my problem unless the noise carries toward our block. I shift left, slip through the Coleman side gate where I cut the lower hinge months back, and move under the porch. The porch roof panel is above me, tucked against the slope where most people on the street would never notice it. I climb the support post using the cross bracing, keep my weight centered, and pull myself up to the roof edge. The problem shows itself the second I touch the cable boot. Moisture got in under the weather cap, froze overnight, then loosened the contact on the input side. The controller is trying to regulate bad current, and that's what threw static into the branch. I kill the line, dry the contact, strip the cable end back to clean metal, and fit the new boot. Then, I wipe the panel face with the brush and cloth. Dirt builds slow in winter, but enough frost and soot will drag output down day by day until a battery chart looks bad, and I have to spend a morning crawling over porch roofs. While I work, I hear the first hard metal strike from the pharmacy lot. Then another. Then a crash. The man with the crowbar either hit a roll-up door or dropped something heavy. I flatten to the shingles and look over the porch peak. He's hammering the loading latch with the bar like he thinks speed fixes judgment. The woman in the green coat is backing away from him now, scanning the street. She knows what comes after noise. He doesn't. The infected by the newspaper rack turns first. Slow, then direct. The one at the curb rolls from one side, pushes up and gets a knee under itself. The woman sees both and starts moving backward toward the alley. The man yanks the loading door hard enough to rattle the frame, and the bottom panel jumps a few inches, then slams back down. That sound goes out across the empty street and down the lane toward the church lot. I don't wait to count how many heads it turns. I finish my connection, test the branch, and slide back off the roof. The west camera feed should clear when Holly resets the node from below. I cut through the Coleman kitchen instead of going back the way I came, using the house shell as cover. Cabinets are open and bare, chairs down on the floor. One plate broken under the table where I left it the winter after the outbreak, when I checked this place for dry goods and found nothing worth the risk. I move through the dining room to the front hall, peek through the cracked sidelight, and see the woman already half down the block. She made the right call. The man hasn't. He's still wrestling the loading door and looking over his shoulder now, finally aware he's in trouble. I cut behind the hedge and start back through the Avery lot. That is when Holly gives me 2 clicks in the earpiece. Hold. I freeze beside the garage wall. A second later I hear what she saw before I did. Dragging steps in the alley behind me. I ease around the corner enough to look. One infected in a mail carrier jacket is coming up the alley from the west end. Head tilted, shoes scraping through broken glass and grit. It is not fast, not fresh, but it is angled right toward the fence gap I use. The pharmacy noise pulled it off its old loop. I stay where I am and wait for Holly. She gives 1 click. Stop. Then nothing. That means she's trying to find me a better line on another camera. I count in my head and keep the carbine close, finger off the trigger. The infected drifts nearer, 1 foot dragging, shoulders locked. Then, I hear another sound from the lot beyond the fence, a metal trash can lid flipping in the wind. The infected turns its head toward that, not away from me, but enough. I take the opening, slip along the garage wall, and slide through the loose fence panel while it's looking the other way. I make the yard, then the workshop, then the hatch. Once the lid closes behind me and the tool chest rolls back into place, the outside drops away, and all I hear is the bunker again. Fans, pumps, the little tick in the line over the sink, Holly's keys clicking on the console. Susan is already at the vestibule with the washtub. Static cleared, Holly calls from the main room. West feed is clean. Good, I say, and then I strip in order. Jacket to wash, gloves to the rack, boots scrubbed at the tray, tools on the dry shelf. Susan checks my sleeves, my cuffs, the knees of my pants, the soles of my boots, then my hands once the outer layer is off. No cuts, no visible contamination. She nods and hands me the detergent. Pharmacy lot? She asks. 3 roamers, 1 woman with sense, 2 men with less. Close? 2 blocks. Holly appears in the doorway with the headset hanging around her neck. They drew 4 infected on the church cam after you came back. The man in the yellow raincoat ran east. I lost him behind the bus stop. She says it fast, focused, not excited. That's what I want from her now. Not fear, useful information. While the outer clothes soak, I stand at the sink and wash up, and Susan opens the maintenance ledger to a fresh page. She writes the date, the hour, the branch name, and the repair details while I call them out. West branch porch controller input, moisture intrusion under weather cap, contact stripped, reconnected, new boot fitted, output restored. Holly adds the camera note from the console. West porch feed static cleared on manual node reset. Pharmacy lot noise event at 9:17. 4 infected redirected from church side within 2 minutes. 1 mail carrier variant drifted off alley loop due to secondary noise in West Lane. Susan glances at Holly over the pen. Variant? Holly shrugs. Mail jacket. That's how I'm sorting the clip. Susan lets it pass and keeps writing. We've all got names for the infected now, and not one of them matters if the behavior stays consistent. Some people we've overheard from old radios called them biters. Some called them walkers. One preacher on a recorded loop called them the judged. I call them infected if I'm writing, dead ones if I'm speaking, and trouble if I'm in a hurry. The ledger takes up more shelf space every month. We have 1 for power and water, 1 for food, 1 for exterior movement, and 1 that started as a medical notebook and turned into our observation binder on the infected. Susan runs that one. She is the reason the notes are worth anything. I write down what I see. Holly clips timestamps and saves footage. Susan turns it into rules. How fast a fresh body can start moving in cold shade. How long dried residue on a metal handle seems to stay risky before weather and time break it down enough that we don't treat it like a hot surface. Which sounds pull more movement. Engine starts, banging sheet metal, barking, human shouting, rolling carts, broken glass. Which conditions preserve function in damaged bodies? Covered porches, garages, crawl spaces, shaded ditch walls, closed stores with busted windows. Which conditions break them down faster? Open pavement, full sun, standing water with freeze-thaw, direct impact to joints they already use badly. None of it gives us a cure. None of it makes the world less dead. It does keep us alive. Lunch is lentils, crackers, and 1 spoon of canned carrots mixed into the pot to break the color. Holly sets the projector screen down halfway over the storage wall while we eat, not to watch anything yet, but to cover the shelves. She says eating while looking at 30 buckets of rice and beans makes every meal taste worse. She isn't wrong. Susan sits across from me with the observation binder open beside her bowl. You remember when I said the notebooks were a waste of time? She asks. Yes. I said that as much as I said the bunker was a waste. Holly points her cracker at her mother. You also said he was building a life where we'd count beans and watch dead people on monitors. Susan looks at her. And? Holly waves toward the screens. Now I count beans and watch dead people on monitors. I'm saying he had a clear vision. I shake my head. I had a list. Susan smiles for the first time that day, small and tired but real. You had a list that turned into a life. After lunch, the routine starts chewing through the hours the way it always does. I swap the warm equalizer on bank 3 with 1 from the spare shelf. Holly rotates pantry inventory and marks open containers with the thick black marker. Susan cleans the water pre-filter housing, checks the seal on the medicine bin, and repacks the first aid drawer so everything sits in the same order. That order matters when the lights are low and hands are shaking from cold or fatigue. I pull the air scrubber panel, knock out the dust, replace the filter, and vacuum the intake grill with the hand pump attachment. Holly hates pantry days more than any other job. I know that from the way she shoulders the bucket lids like she's moving bricks and the way she goes quiet after the 10th shelf. "This is the daily routine that kills a person," she mutters while she updates the oatmeal count. Not actual death, just the slow kind where every day is labels, lids, and the same shelves. Susan closes the filter housing and looks at her. "The shelves are why you're here to complain." Holly presses the marker cap on hard. "I know, I'm just saying the shelves win every day." She isn't wrong on that either. The routine is what wears us down more than the danger. Not the dramatic parts. Not the surface runs. Not the nights when a distant shout or a car alarm drags half the block in one direction and we sit in the dark without talking. It's the repetition. Clean the same tray. Check the same seals. Dry the same clothes on the same line over the same vent. Make the same meals from the same bins. Rewatch the same movies on the same hard drives. I built this place for survival, not for joy. It does the first job well. The second job, we do ourselves, and not always well. Holly gets through pantry rotation, then sits on the floor by the lower shelves and rubs her wrists. Susan steps over, puts a hand on her shoulder and says, "Take 10, then cardstock, not projector." Holly makes a face. "You always call games work now. If it keeps your hands moving and your mind off the walls, it's work." Holly leans her head back against the shelf and stares at the ceiling. "I used to think normal life was boring." I tighten the battery terminal and say, "Normal had stores, weather reports, and neighbors you didn't have to watch through a lens." By mid-afternoon, the church cam picks up the woman from the pharmacy lot. Green coat, canvas sack, quick walk, head always moving. She cuts across the far side of the lot, stops once by the bus bench, checks the street, then disappears behind the old insurance office. She's alone now. No sign of the yellow raincoat man. No sign of the third one. Holly clips the feed, saves the timestamp, and tags her as Green Coat Woman, careful, solo. Susan adds a note under human movement. Group split after avoidable noise. Woman responds early. Men delay. Mixed discipline. Holly looks at the line Susan writes and snorts. That sounds nicer than what actually happened. "The ledger doesn't need attitude," Susan says. Holly sits back at the console and zooms the camera on the insurance office corner. "I'd still like to know where she sleeps." "Far from here," I say. "That's the best answer." Susan nods without looking up. "We don't need to know more than that unless she starts looping this block." At 4 in the afternoon, I go up to the workshop hatch with Holly for training. Susan stays at the board with the headset and watches the exterior feeds while I walk Holly through the process again. Lift the tool chest without scraping the wheel. Check the hatch edge for dust pattern breaks. Open the lid 2 inches first and stop. Listen, smell, count. Open fully only after the second count. Climb to floor level and freeze at the top rung while your eyes adjust. Scan low first. Bench legs, floor shadows, under shelves, door seam, window slit, then ceiling corners. Holly knows the list. She repeats it while she climbs. She is good with steps when she stays calm. What she lacks is the quiet habit of doing them with the same pace every time. Up top, I let her move to the south slit and check the yard through the board gap. She whispers, "Clear." "Say it only if you need me to hear it," I whisper back. She nods, sets her jaw, and checks the side door latch next. No yard today, no stepping outside. Training stops at the threshold, and she knows why. The first time a person thinks training equals readiness is often the last time he gets to think it. When we come back down, Susan has the dinner pot on and an old card table set up by the projector wall. She points at it with the wooden spoon. "No screen tonight. Cards." Holly drops into the chair. "You say that like it's punishment. It's not. We save power where we can. We eat rice, canned chicken, and a little onion powder for flavor." Susan spreads the cards after we wash up and deals, while Holly mutters about how I always count points like I'm filing paperwork. The game helps for 20 minutes. Then the roof cam catches movement on the Avery lot, and Holly sets her cards down without finishing the hand. A man I don't know is cutting across the back line between the garages, bent under a bulging pack, moving fast but not quiet. He stops by the loose fence panel I use and crouches. My chest tightens, not with panic, just with a hard focus that narrows the room. He touches the panel edge, studies the ground, then stands and keeps moving west without lifting it. He spotted the weakness. He did not use it. That means he saw something worth noting, or he's cautious enough to dislike any opening he didn't make himself. Holly zooms the feed. Dark beanie, grey backpack, no visible long gun. Susan closes the card deck and pushes it aside. Face, not from this angle. The man stops again at the Avery garage corner, glances toward the pharmacy lot, then toward the church, then keeps going. He never looks straight at our yard, but that means less than people think. A careful man can see a lot without turning his head much. He clears the far fence and vanishes behind the old service station. Holly looks at me. He saw the loose panel. Yes. Do we seal it tonight? No metal after dark. Susan is already writing in the human movement ledger. We change the route tomorrow in daylight and leave this one looking untouched. Holly folds her arms. If he comes back before tomorrow, then we stay quiet and see what kind of man he is. Holly doesn't like that. Neither do I. But surface repairs after dusk are the kind of choice that grows two problems out of one. The night shifts slow. We kill the brighter lights, leave only the task lamps on the table and over the utility panel, and keep the screen wall dim. Susan goes through the medicine drawer and checks expiration dates again, even though we all know them. Holly copies a page of shorthand notes into clean print for the binder. I sit under the ladder shaft and break down the West Branch kit so it's ready if I need it again tomorrow. At 8, one of the old drive-in speakers across town starts squealing in the wind. We can't hear it directly, only through the church lot camera when the mic catches the sound bouncing off the empty street. It pulls the slow mover by the sign across the lot and drags another one in from the corner. Then, somewhere past the service station, I hear a generator cough to life. Not ours. Too ragged. Too open. One of the roamers found fuel and decided light was worth the risk. Susan reaches over and turns our table lamp off without a word. Holly mutes the projector outlet at the switch strip. We sit in the dim glow of the screen wall and wait. The infected do what they always do when a steady engine note hits the air in a quiet block. Heads turn. Bodies that looked down and finished start moving again. The church cam catches two crossing the lot. The alley cam shows the mail jacket one dragging itself back the other way, redirected by the new sound. The service station feed is gone, but the roof line beyond it flickers with weak yellow light, which means the generator is close to the station or inside the attached garage next door. Holly watches the feeds with both hands on the console. That's 8 moving on the east side. Susan keeps her eyes on the side maps and marks each visible path with pencil. No voices, she says. Either the roamer learned or he's already in trouble. A sharp clatter comes through the alley mic. Then the generator revs high once, chokes, catches again, and runs rough. I know that sound. Dirty carburetor or bad fuel. It might die on its own. It might keep drawing everything on the block until the fuel is gone. We do nothing. That's the whole job sometimes. Sit in the dark, listen to bad choices outside, and do nothing. For almost an hour the noise rises and falls. At one point we hear shouting, too far to make out words. Then the shouting cuts off and the generator keeps going. Then the generator cuts too, sudden and flat, and the silence after it feels heavy enough to touch. The infected on the cameras don't stop right away. They keep moving toward where the sound was, then bunch, then slow, then start to drift again once there's nothing new to follow. Holly keeps the church lot and alley feeds on split zoom. Susan writes times. I watch routes and think through what I'll have to change in the morning. If the man with the grey backpack comes back to check that fence panel, I need another exit line. If the roamers start using the service station as a camp, I need the West Branch rerouted farther south. If the woman in the green coat saw the same thing, she may avoid the whole block now, which would be the smartest move anyone has made around here today. Near midnight, Holly rubs her eyes and leans back. I used to think staying down here meant hiding. Now it feels like watching everybody else make the same mistakes on repeat. Susan closes the ledger. That is a big part of it. I sleep in bursts and wake before dawn to the same relay click, the same hum, the same cold floor under my feet. The first thing I check is the fence route. Roof cam on the Avery lot. Empty. Workshop yard. Clear. Church lot. 5 infected now, all spread wide and slow after the night's noise draw. Service station roof edge. No light. Alley cam. 1 body down near the west turn, hard to tell if fresh or old from the angle. Susan comes up beside me in her sweater and reads the screen. You're going out for that fence panel and the west path. Yes. Take the south bypass instead. Longer. Hidden. She's right. I hate that she's right when it adds time. But she's right. Holly comes out carrying the clipboard before I even ask. I already marked the south bypass. She lays it on the table. Insurance office crawl, then the side wall behind the old dentist place. You can check the service station line from the hedge cut if you need to. She looks at the alley feed and adds, and there's a downed body near the west turn. If it's fresh, I want the timer. That's our life now too. We measure danger, not out of curiosity, out of survival. If a fresh body drops in shade and gets back up in 7 minutes, that changes how long we wait before crossing a lot. If a body in open sun takes 30 and moves poorly, that changes another route. Susan says the notes turn fear into procedure. I think the notes keep us from making guesses when we're tired. I eat standing up, 2 crackers with peanut butter and coffee, then gear up again. Holly hands me the wristwatch we use for surface timing. I reset it. You're not timing through the cameras? I am, but I want yours synced. Susan checks my gloves, my collar, the radio battery, the spare battery, and the tie on the cloth cover over the carbine. South bypass only. No service station entry. I know. If the body is fresh, time from first visible motion. I know. Holly leans on the table and watches me pull the jacket closed. You know, before all this, I thought your lectures were the worst thing in the house. And now? Now they're one of the better features. The south bypass takes me under the dentist place fence, through a crawl gap where lattice once covered the foundation, then along the rear wall through a strip of dead vines and broken concrete planters. It is slower and dirtier than the Avery route, but no loose panel, no obvious access point, no repeated wear where a cautious man might notice. I check the service station from the hedge cut first. The yard is quiet. 1 side bay door is open 6 inches. No visible movement. No light. No smoke from the roof vent. I do not go closer. I move on to the Avery line from the backside and reach the fence panel through the neighbor lot instead of the alley. Up close, the panel tells the truth. Grey backpack man touched it, then left. There is a clean thumb wipe on the top edge where he tested the dust. He did not lift it. Good. I remove the panel pins from the inside, set new wire ties higher up, and weight the bottom with 2 bricks under leaf cover so it no longer swings if touched. From the outside, it looks the same. From my side, I know it is dead. Then, I bury a new crawl route marker 3 yards south under the dead planter, where only I would think to look. On the way back, I stop where the alley cam showed the body. A man lies half under the west turn fence in a brown coat, 1 arm caught in the bent lower rail. Backpack gone, shoes still on. From the cut of the coat and the shape of the hat under one shoulder, I think it is one of the pharmacy men, but I can't be sure from this angle and I'm not close enough to gamble on it. He is in full shade under the fence overhang. No movement when I arrive. I set the watch timer and take cover behind the low wall by the insurance office corner. Holly sees me on the church side camera and clicks once in my ear. Stop. I stay down and watch. 1 minute, 3, 5, nothing. 7 minutes and 15 seconds. The fingers on the trapped hand twitch. At 8 minutes, the shoulder jerks. At 8.5, the head rolls toward open air and the good arm drags once against the pavement. No words. No sound except cloth scraping grit. At 9 minutes, the torso tries to rise and the trapped arm keeps it pinned crooked. That is all I need. I back away without testing the distance any further. When I return, Susan has the binder open before I finish washing. Shade, cool air, trapped under rail. Visible motion at 7:15. Full gross attempt by 9. she writes as I speak. Holly syncs the camera feed and tags the clip. He wasn't all the way gone in the first 5, she says. How do you know? I ask. Head angle stayed loose. No full lock. Susan nods. Write that as tentative only. No guessing beyond the clip. Holly writes possible retained muscle tone before gross movement in the margin and underlines possible twice. I love that. Not the note itself, the discipline. Early on, we all filled the silence with guesses. Now we mark what we see and leave the rest blank unless new evidence fills it. That change has saved us more than once. Assumptions are expensive up top. I dry off, change my gloves for the better pair Susan picked yesterday, and sit down while she flips to the human movement page. Any sign of the green coat woman? No. Grey backpack man? No. Touched the panel yesterday. Didn't use it. Holly taps the log with her pen. That means he's cautious, not bold. Cautious men live longer, Susan says, which means we plan for him again. The next few hours are routine again. That's how all the tension bleeds out here. Not into relief, but into chores. I service the hand pump on the backup water line. Holly clears the condensation tray under the cooling rack. Susan portions out the next week's dry goods into smaller bins so we aren't opening the big buckets every day. We talk while we work, which is how family life happens in this place. No one sits around for talks. Talks right on tasks. Holly is scooping rice into the weekly bin when she says, "When you started pouring concrete, I told Jenna at school you were building a panic room for your ego." I look up from the pump gasket. Did she laugh? For a week. Where is Jenna now? Holly stops scooping and stares at the bin. I don't know. Susan seals a lid and slides it to the shelf. That's why I stopped mocking all the ugly practical stuff. The ugly practical stuff stays. Holly nods and keeps scooping. I know. I get it now. I'm not saying that to make you feel good. I'm saying it so you know I see it. I tighten the pump housing and say, I never built this so I could say I told you so. Susan snorts. Good, since I would throw you back outside if you did. We get one decent hour of calm in the afternoon, so Holly begs for roof air. Not a surface run, not a long trip. Just the workshop roof hatch with the ladder brace. 3 minutes of sky, 2 cameras on, 1 person at the board, 1 person on the ladder. No street exposure. We've done it before when the block is quiet and the light is good. I check the cameras twice before I agree. No movement in the yards. Church lot loop is wide, service station quiet, pharmacy lot empty. Susan looks at me. 3 minutes, no standing tall. Holly almost smiles. We gear light for it. No full surface kit, only gloves, jackets and face shields in case of debris or bad contact. Up through the workshop, out the rear roof hatch, stay low behind the parapet. And there it is. Cold air, pale sun. The whole block spread out in dead stillness and movement at the same time. Holly closes her eyes for 1 second and lifts her face toward the sky. Susan stands beside the hatch, one hand on the frame, not relaxed, not tense, just present. I used to complain that this place buried us, Holly says softly. Now 3 minutes of open air feels like a holiday. I stay prone and scan roofs while she talks. A line of old solar panels glints on the Hartwell place. The church steeple has one loose strip of flashing flapping in the wind. The service station bay still hangs open. 2 infected move in slow stagger on the far street, too distant to matter. No human movement. Susan crouches by the hatch and says, "You spent money on filters, batteries, steel, dry food, old movies, a water tank, and enough spare bolts to build a second life. I used to think every dollar that went down here was a dollar you took from normal life." She looks across the block, then at the hatch under her hand. "Now I see you bought us time after normal life ended." Holly looks at her mother, then at me. "And board games. Don't leave out the board games. I used to make fun of those too." "You mocked the card table for a year," I say. "I thought it looked sad." "It is sad," Susan says. "It's also useful." Holly laughs then, a short burst that ends fast when she remembers where she is. We go back down before the full 3 minutes runs out. That is how survival stays survival. Stop before comfort makes you slow. Toward evening, the church lot camera catches movement that changes the whole rhythm of the day. Not infected. People. 4 of them this time, all moving together, all carrying packs. One with a long pry tool over one shoulder, one with a blanket roll tied across his back, one woman with a stroller frame loaded with bags instead of a child, and a broad man in a dark coat walking point. The broad man checks windows. He watches corners. He signals with 2 fingers instead of waving his whole arm. That means he is not the same level as the pharmacy fools. This group has done this enough to stay alive. Holly stiffens at the console. They're heading west. Susan steps to the side map. If they cut the lot, they'll pass the insurance office and the west turn. I lean over Holly's shoulder. Bring up the service station angle. She does. And there they are again a minute later, moving past the bay door without stopping. The broad man glances at it, then keeps walking. Good sign. The woman with the stroller frame does not stop either. Better sign. They cross the block, stay off the loud surfaces, avoid the hung chain by the station fence, and keep going. We watch until they clear the far side and disappear behind the dentist lot. No one breaks from the group. No one pokes through yards. No one checks doors without cover. That tells me enough. Organized, tired, passing through, not hunting. Susan writes in the human ledger, 4-person transit group, disciplined spacing, avoided obvious noise sources. No visible interest in residential entry on this block. Holly reads the line and asks, does discipline make them safer or worse? Both, I say. Safe for themselves. Worse for anyone they decide to notice. Susan closes the ledger halfway. Then our best plan stays the same. No signs. No noise. No pattern a smart person can read. Holly watches the dead church lot again. So all that work you did making this place look useless from the street? That's half the bunker, I say. Concrete below. Nothing worth a second look above. She nods slowly. I used to think the fake neglect was embarrassing. Now I hope it gets uglier. Dinner is beans and cornbread made from mix so old the box gave up months ago and lives now in a marked jar. Susan adds a little canned corn and a pinch of chili powder, and that's enough to make it feel like more than fuel. We eat with the monitor wall dim and the ledgers stacked at the edge of the table. Holly pushes her plate back and says, if we ever run out of food, I'm haunting you over these beans. If we run out of food, haunting will be low on the list, Susan says. Holly points at the shelves. See, that's the bunker attitude, straight to logistics. Susan wipes her spoon and looks at her daughter in a way that says she's trying not to smile. Logistics is how you are here to make jokes about beans. I stand to check the battery board again, and Holly follows me with her eyes. Did you always know it would be this much work? Yes. Every day? Yes. Did you know it would feel this small? I check the bank readout before I answer. I knew it would feel smaller than the outside and bigger than a grave. That was the target. Holly leans back in the chair and lets that sit. Susan says nothing. She doesn't need to. We all understand the math. That night, near 10, the green coat woman returns to the edge of the church lot. Alone again, she moves low, cuts behind the bus bench, and kneels by the donation bin, where shadows run deep. She is either cashing something or pulling something out. Holly zooms until the image starts to break. Metal tin, cloth wrap. She hid supplies there. Susan flips to the human page. Root memory, cache behavior, solo movement after group loss. I watch the woman tuck the tin deeper under the broken flap of the bin, then step back and freeze. One infected drifts into the lot from the street, head turning toward the small scrape she made. She does not run. She slips around the far side of the bench, puts the metal frame between her and the infected, then angles out along the curb while it tracks the sound and pauses at the bin. Controlled. No panic. She's better than the men she started with. Holly watches her vanish west and says, if anybody near here lasts another month, it'll be her. Susan writes one more note. Solo woman, green coat. Strong situational discipline. Avoid unless behavior changes. I nod. Agreed. We turn in late. The wind rises around midnight and starts pushing wet sleet against the workshop roof. By 1 in the morning, The rain catch line starts rattling at the upper filter housing. I hear it in my sleep and wake before the leak alarm even sounds. Then the alarm sounds anyway, a short pulsing chirp from the water panel. I'm out of the bunk and at the tank before Holly fully opens her door. Susan is right behind me, already tying her hair up. The inflow pressure is spiking and dropping in jumps. That means the roof gutter screen has iced over, the line is sucking air, or the first downspout diverter is clogged with sleet and leaf mash. The overflow relief is opening and closing fast. If the pressure hammers long enough, it'll stress the line coupling under the workshop. I switch the intake to tank only. The hammering stops. The panel keeps flashing fault on the catch line. Susan checks the floor under the utility wall for seep. Dry. Good. Holly pulls up the workshop gutter cam. The image is blurred with wet streaks, but I can still see the downspout overflowing across the side roof instead of feeding the concealed catch pipe. It's clogged, she says. No kidding, I tell the screen. There are no good choices at 1 in the morning in sleet. There are only less bad ones. If I leave the catch line isolated until daylight, we lose the storm's water input and risk ice building heavier along the workshop edge, which can pull at the hidden pipe mount. If I go up now, I work wet, cold, and blind in partial light. Susan reads my face before I say anything. You're going. I have to clear the diverter before it freezes solid. Holly is already setting the exterior lights to none. I'll keep the yard cam boosted and the side roof zoom on. Susan grabs the decon towels and lays fresh dry clothes on the rack before I even finish dressing. That is what we are now. 1 person moving, 2 already filling the gaps. I put on the rain shell over the wax jacket, add the hood, switch to the grip gloves, and take only a scraper rod and short hook tool. No bulky pack, no long route. This is straight up to the workshop roof and back down. The dead move slower in this weather, but sound carries strangely in wet dark, and a slip off that roof would leave me outside with a broken leg and no clean rescue. The workshop feels colder than the bunker by 20 degrees, and the roof hatch metal bites through the glove when I lift it. Sleet hits my face shield and runs off in thin streams. I stay low, crawl the short slope to the gutter edge, and hook my left arm through the anchor loop I bolted here years ago. The gutter is packed with slush, leaves, and 1 clump of roofing grit that has formed a plug over the diverter mouth. Water is sheeting over the top and spreading under the hidden flashing where the catch line feeds the pipe. I jam the scraper into the slush and clear in short pulls. The first break sends a gush down the diverter hard enough to shake the pipe. Good. Then the flow chokes again. Something deeper is blocking the throat. I use the hook tool, twist, pull, and free a mat of leaves and 1 piece of torn plastic bag that must have blown in from the alley weeks ago. The water catches at once, disappears under the flashing, and the pipeline hum changes under me. Holly clicks once in my earpiece. Stop. I freeze on the roof, 1 hand in the gutter. Then I hear it, a dragging step in the yard below. I do not move my head fast. I angle down through the sleet and catch a shape by the side fence, half hidden by the hedge. 1 infected, drawn in by the roof noise, or simply wandering the line at the worst possible moment. Hard to tell in the weather. It turns toward the workshop wall and reaches 1 arm against the siding, not climbing, only testing the surface by contact the way they do when a sound source stops and they're left with the last known direction. Holly clicks twice. Hold. I stay anchored on the roof while the water starts flowing right again through the diverter. Below me, the infected drags along the wall to the corner, loses the sound, and turns toward the fence where sleet is rattling on the loose tin sheet I left there months ago as a noise sink. Good. It bumps the tin once, then follows that small sound instead of the wall. I take the moment, back down from the gutter on my stomach, close the hatch, and drop into the workshop. No rush. Wet metal and panic are a bad pair. I seal the hatch, go to the slit, and check the yard. The infected is at the far fence now, 1 shoulder pressed to the tin. I go down the ladder. Back in the vestibule, Susan strips the wet shell off me before I even reach for the zipper. Catch line? She asks. Clear. 1 infected brushed the yard wall. Holly calls from the board. He's at the fence still, no direct line to the workshop door. Susan nods and shoves the wet clothes into the washtub. Then we let weather and metal distract him. I scrub down, towel off, and pull on the dry clothes she laid out. The water panel clears fault after 20 seconds, and the tank input ticks upward again. Small win, costly hour. Holly looks at the charge graph and then at me. This place runs on the stupidest tiny problems. That's all infrastructure is, I say. 1,000 stupid tiny problems that turn into one big one if you ignore them. Susan hangs the wet gloves near the heat exchanger and checks the catch pressure twice more. 3 years ago, if he said that at dinner, I'd roll my eyes. Holly sits back in the chair and rubs her face with both hands. Now it sounds like scripture. Susan points at her with the pen. Don't ever say scripture in this house unless you want him to start a lecture on pump seals. Morning after the storm is grey and raw. Water levels are better. Battery input is lower under cloud cover but stable. The side fence infected has moved on. The church lot holds 3 slow movers again, the others dispersed by the weather. The Broadman's group from yesterday does not return. Green coat woman does not appear on any feed through breakfast. Holly yawns over her bowl and says, "You know what I miss most? Not concerts, not school, not stores. I miss going outside without a checklist." Susan stirs powdered milk into coffee and says, "I miss forgetting where the nearest clean water is. I look at the monitor wall while I eat. I miss not thinking about every sound." Holly glances up. "You did that before too. Not like this." She nods. "Fair." After breakfast, we do the slow jobs. Wet line inspection, drying the rain gear, cleaning the catch filter bucket after the storm flush, updating the rainfall estimate in the water ledger. Susan logs medication use. Holly backs up the camera clips from the last 2 days to the hard drive labeled exterior winter events. I sort spare hardware into one drawer and realize we are down to 3 of the connector boots I used on the west branch. That puts another trip on the board whether I like it or not. I tell Susan while she's repacking the medicine shelf. We're low on weather boots, fine wire and chlorhexidine. I found some swabs at the clinic last week, but not enough. She doesn't stop working. Hardware store? Maybe. Maybe the small electrical aisle in the home center if the roof access holds. Holly looks up from the drive case. That's farther than the clinic. Safer entry, if the rear stock door still opens. Susan seals the medicine bin and looks straight at me. Then it's tomorrow. Daylight. No extras. If the route is clean. Holly turns back to the console. I'll review the old feeds on the home center block. This is how planning happens. No speeches. No dramatic map spread. One shortage. One route. One review. Susan closes the bin and rests both palms on the shelf edge for a second. Before all this, if you told me we were spending Saturday deciding whether we had enough cable boots to keep the house alive, I would have laughed in your face. You did laugh in my face, I say. Holly grins without looking away from the screen. A lot, actually. Susan points at both of us. And now you're alive to bring it up. That's enough. The afternoon brings one more reminder that the dead are only half the problem. Grey backpack man returns. Same hat. Same quick, careful pace. He appears on the far roofline by the insurance office, crosses low, then stops at the alley break where the old panel route used to be. He studies the ground. He checks the fence post. He touches the tied panel I deadened yesterday and tests it once. It doesn't move. He crouches, scans the yard lines, then stands and backs off. He knows something changed. He can't see how. That is good enough for now. Holly keeps the zoom tight on his hands. He noticed the difference. He was supposed to, I say. The trick is making the difference look like weather or age, not a person. Susan writes while she watches. Cautious male, returns to prior point of interest, detects structural change, does not force entry without cover. Holly looks at the screen, then at me. He's the kind of man who circles back. That's why the route changed. Susan closes the ledger and says, and that's why we don't get lazy after one quiet night. Grey backpack man leaves without ever seeing our yard. That doesn't make me feel safe. It makes me feel measured. There's a difference. Near dusk, Holly asks if we can watch a movie, a real one, not the muted old sitcom episodes we sometimes use as background while folding clothes. Susan checks the battery line first. I knew she would. 1.5 hours only, she says. Sound low. No projector heat if the bank dips. Holly throws both hands in the air like she just won a jackpot. We pick an old action movie we've all seen enough that nobody has to follow every line. That is part of the reason it works. Familiar things cost less energy up here and down here. Susan sits with one foot tucked under her. Holly leans against the couch arm, and I keep one eye on the battery graph every few minutes while the film runs. Halfway through, Holly reaches over and taps my arm. You know what else I was wrong about? That list could fill a binder. I was wrong that all the extra stuff was useless. The cards, the movies, the little speaker, the dumb shelf of paperbacks. I thought if the world ended, survival would be all food and locks. Susan looks at the screen and says, "Food and locks keep you alive. The rest keeps you from going mean or dull." Holly nods. That too. I glance at the shelf beside the projector where the game cases and DVDs sit in neat rows next to the spare fuses and the repair manuals. Same shelf, same value, different use. The movie ends and the routine starts again. Power down projector, fold screen, log battery drawer, brush teeth with measured water, check night feeds, set the low lamps, lock the workshop hatch. Before bed, Susan takes the observation binder and reads through the new notes one more time. Not for drama, not to relive any of it, but to make sure the wording stays clean. Shade under rail, 7:15 first motion, 9 full rise attempt. She reads softly, then flips pages. Pharmacy group split after loading door noise. Green coat woman preserves distance and avoids secondary noise. 4-person transit group maintains spacing and bypasses visible shelter opportunities. Holly is lying on the couch with one arm over her face. You read that stuff like bedtime stories now. Susan snaps the binder shut. I read it so sleepy people don't misread it tomorrow. Holly peeks out from under her arm. I know. I'm not mocking. Not much anyway. I stand by the ladder shaft and listen to the hum, the same hum that woke me this morning and will wake me again tomorrow. Tomorrow I go for supplies if the route stays clean, I say. Susan nods. Holly drops her arm and looks at me. Connector boots, chlorhexidine, fine wire. And if the store gives me one orange, then I marry the orange. I sleep harder that night. No generator noise outside. No alarms. No banging chain. At dawn, the home center route looks clear enough to attempt, and that trip takes most of the day. I leave through the south bypass, cross 3 backlots, slip in through the rear garden section where the greenhouse glass blew out years ago, and enter through a stock door I barred from the inside on an earlier run. The place is stripped, but not empty. The first aid aisle is raided. The tool wall is patchy. The electrical section has been looted by people who grab what looks useful and leave what actually matters. I find fine wire spools buried behind junk extension cords, 4 connector boots shoved in a bent drawer under broken light switches, and 2 bottles of chlorhexidine washed behind a row of cracked hand soap dispensers. I take all of it. I also find a box of board game score pads Holly likes, 3 packs of heavy trash bags, and 1 sealed tin of mandarin oranges with a dent in the side. That last one goes in the pack without discussion. On the way out, I hear voices in the plumbing aisle. 2 men arguing over copper pipe lengths. I freeze, wait, and let them move off before I cross the rear corridor. No shots, no chase, no contact. That is the best kind of surface run. When I come back and set the supplies on the clean shelf, Holly sees the mandarin tin and stares at it like I brought back a gold brick. You actually found one. Not an orange. Close enough. She takes the tin in both hands and reads the label twice. Susan laughs, a full laugh this time, and leans back against the counter. Look at that. He leaves for disinfectant and cable parts and returns as a hero. Holly clutches the tin to her chest. He was already a hero. This makes him useful too. Careful, I say. You're getting soft. She shakes the tin once and grins. No, I'm getting citrus. Susan starts the decon wash for my outer layer and checks the chlorhexidine bottle seals. You see anyone? 2 men in plumbing, arguing over copper, not organized. Any new infected? 1 down in the loading lane by the greenhouse fence. Did not move while I passed. I didn't stop for a timer. Susan nods. Good. Holly is still holding the tin. I take back every single thing I said when you built this place. Even the ego bunker line. Especially that one. We open the oranges after dinner. one segment at a time, forked out into 3 bowls like we're handling medicine. The syrup is thin and metallic, the fruit is too soft, and it tastes better than half the meals we've had in a month. Holly closes her eyes while she eats one segment and shakes her head. I can't believe I used to complain about this bunker. Susan points her fork at her. You complained about the space, the smell of concrete, the shelves, the buckets, the cost, the generator test days, the movie shelf, the card table, the extra blankets in vacuum bags, and the fact that he labeled the bolts by thread pitch. Holly takes another segment. The bolts were excessive. The bolts saved the West Branch hatch in the first winter, I say. See, Susan says, even the bolts. Holly laughs again, quiet and tired and honest. Fine, even the bolts. I look around the room while they eat. The shelves, the table, the ledgers, the patched rug, the monitor glow on the wall. The hum of systems I know better than I know half the streets I used to drive for work. It isn't comfort in the old sense. It is shelter that works. That counts for more now. Later, when the bowls are cleaned and the lights are low, Holly sits by the console and scrolls through the saved clips from the week. Green coat woman at the donation bin, grey backpack man testing the panel, the disciplined group crossing the lot, the pharmacy fool making noise until the block answered, the body under the fence rail rising at 8.5 minutes. She watches them in silence, then starts typing the clean summary lines into the archive index. Susan is at the table repacking the new chlorhexidine with the old stock and marking the bottle dates. I'm at the utility wall, fitting the new connector boots into the labeled drawer and counting the remaining spares. Holly says, without looking up, "You know what changes the most down here?" "What?" I ask. At first, you think survival is hiding from something big. Then you learn it's all small things. Dirt in a contact, a blocked gutter, a loose fence panel, a loud fool with a crowbar, a dead body in the shade for 9 minutes. The whole world ends in huge ways, and then you spend every day fighting the little pieces. Susan looks at me over the table. "That sounds like one of his lectures." Holly nods. "Yeah, I know. That's how bad it's gotten." I shut the drawer, turn the lamp down another notch, and do the last walk of the day. It's a useless walk if you judge by what changes. Same seals, same locks, same tanks, same fans, same ladders, same hatches, same shelves, same family. That sameness is the point. I check the workshop hatch, touch the latches on the crawl tunnel, look at the water gauge, confirm the night setting on the inverter, and stop by the monitor wall one more time. Church lot quiet, alley quiet, service station bay still open, one infected under the sign, one under the bus bench, both on their own slow loops. No people in sight. Susan closes the medicine bin and stacks it back in the cabinet. Holly shuts down the archive drive and sets the headset on its hook. I turn away from the screens and look at both of them. Up top stays dead. Down here stays running. That's the whole job tomorrow too. Susan says, "Then tomorrow we do the job." Holly nods and stretches, stiff from the chair. "And if it all holds, we play cards before bed." I check the last relay light, then kill the lamp. If it all holds, we play cards. That is how it goes. We stay hidden. We go up only when the systems demand it or the supplies run low. We watch the dead drift through old patterns and break those patterns when noise pulls them. We watch roamers make careful choices and stupid ones, and sometimes we learn from both. We write everything down that can keep us alive and throw out anything that feels clever but can't survive contact with the next real problem. The bunker does not save us on its own. The concrete, steel, filters, batteries, and food buy us a chance every day, and then we still have to do the work. That work is dull, repetitive, and heavy enough to grind a person down if he lets it. It is also the reason we wake up to another relay click, another coffee, another charge graph, another list, another day. Years ago, Susan and Holly thought I buried money in the yard and called it security. Now they know what I built. Not a fantasy, not a fortress. A machine for saying no to a dead world long enough to keep going in it. And that's where we'll stop for now. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me how the story hit you, what moments worked, what didn't, and what you'd want to hear next. And a big thank you to everyone supporting the channel. You keep this project alive. Until next time, survivor. Jack's Nightmares, signing off.